I now hand over the session to the chairperson to kindly introduce the speakers and kickstart the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that being a post-lunch session, it's always going to be difficult to get everyone in the room early, but I'm sure people will get in as we speak. I'd just like to invite the panelists on stage before we start with Coen's quick presentation to us and keynote address on the experience of the industry. So Coen, can I have you up on stage, please? Coen Vanbaar is the Senior Product Director at Hansen and has over 20 years of experience in the PayTV and billing industry. Coen, sorry, why don't I? I'm going to keep the introductions very, very short. Coen has been an independent consultant as well for a long time and has worked at leading organizations besides Hansen. Prior to that, he was at Irdeto. I have Ravikant Sharma, who's a solutions expert from Conax, which is part of the Kudelsky Group. He's been involved with key projects defining trends for the industry. So Ravi currently helps operators in designing the next level of digital TV architecture. Thank you, Ravi, for joining us. Amit Kharbanda is the Managing Director of MYBOX Technologies. He brings an extensive experience in the Indian electronics and broadcasting industry. He's an active member of CII and several bodies, and MYBOX Technology, the company that he's representing today, is a government approved R&D house, completely driven and fully fueled by the Make in India initiative. And last but not the least, I take the pleasure and privilege of inviting Anil Malhotra, who's the Chief Operating Officer of SITI Networks Limited. He is a very senior veteran of the industry, has been with the pay TV industry or in terms of the MSO platforms and others for several years. He was, prior to joining SITI Networks, where he's the CEO, he was Executive Vice President of the North India with Broadband PaceNet Private Limited. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please, thank you, panelists, for joining us. Coen, if I can, before we kick off the panel, if I can hand over the microphone to you for your presentation. Can I trigger it off from here, Coen's presentation? Oh, it's here. No, you can. Yeah. Yeah, so he's doing. Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Vynsely.
Thank you.
All right, welcome everybody. It's great to be here. I want to talk to you about ARPU. I think it's a big topic for a lot of us in the industry. And like the company that I represent, Hansen, we do this across the world with clients in many different areas. And some of them are similar to India, but others are actually quite different. So this would be a bit of a perspective of what it could be around the world and how it could be in India too. ARPU obviously is the average revenue per user. This is one of the main drivers, together with like customer acquisition and churn, that really drives our industry. ARPU has been under quite a bit of pressure, and I think some of these pressures are more Indian specific, and some of them are actually quite generic. If you look, competition obviously keeps the ARPU down. Specifically here in India, you get a lot of players, and that actually makes the ARPU difficult to raise. The free-to-air here is very strong. I mean, that is a difficult one to compete with. I mean, how can you compete with free? Then, of course, there's new technologies coming in, like VOD, OTT, and these players that come into this market put additional pressure on it, not only on the ARPU, but also on actually the customer uptake and those things. And then, specifically here in India, the TRAI has quite a bit of influence on all this, because they come up with a lot of legislation. Some of that is quite unique to India, where some of it is a bit more common across the world as well. Of course, the ARPU has also gone down here in India and across the world because we're chasing different demographics. The demographics that we're going after is a larger group of people, but with less money. And therefore, of course, that brings down the average of all that. And then there's all this customer behaviors that's changing. What we see around the world, if you look in the US, you look in Latin America, you look here, there's this drive for skinny bundles. Give me less. I don't want 200 channels anymore. Give me only the 25 channels that I want. So that actually has a lot of impact on everything that we do. On top of that, you got younger generations that actually like YouTube better than some of the more scripted televisions. If I look at my own son, he spends more time on YouTube than in front of the TV. And that obviously has its impact on the ARPU. And then, maybe less here, but what we see across the world is a drive to prepaid. And that drive to prepaid actually also puts pressure on the ARPU. However, although the ARPU is under pressure, some specific Indian factors actually are in its favor. India ARPU is very low, so it can only come up from here if you like. The digitization is complete, so, well, or it's nearing completion I should probably say, but the DES phase 4 is completed. So there are options there to actually increase it. Plus the GDP is going up and the middle class is growing. It makes a big difference. So with that, the forecast for ARPU growth is about, over the next 5 years, it's about 12% for cable, 10% for DTH. May not sound too exciting, but in the rest of the world, it's actually lower than this. So India actually comparatively does really well. Now, these are just the global trends. And you know, how can you as an operator really hone in on some of these things? How can I make my ARPU go up? And to increase ARPU, there's two things you need to know. What does the customer want? What can he afford? And these two things may be very different. If you look at these two cars, they're actually quite far apart. And how do you know this? So to actually run the ARPU and to actually increase that, you can't look at it as a one-size-fits-all. If you look at a country like India, there's so much diversity, not only in language and in regions, but also in economics. The demographics are quite different. There's groups that can afford very different amounts. Beyond that, there's the customer behavior. Now, some of this, and we'll speak about it in the panel, may apply to some point in India, and some of it may be less. This is what we see around the world very clearly. And some of it, I think, will come in India too. Maybe not now, maybe not next year, but over time it will. So if I start with the demographics, obviously you can group them by monthly income. And here's some of the income in India. The bottom group of this probably won't go for PayTV at all. They are going to go with the free HD or the free dish setup, because you know that's the only option that they really have. But on top of that, there are options to actually increase the ARPU. And to increase ARPU, it's really about content. I mean, that's what we see around the world. Content is king is an old saying, and actually today sports is the emperor. It's the only thing really left to drive ARPU. You see it in for example, the IPL here. The deal that Star just did is like, what, $2.5 billion. They need to make that money back somehow, right? Some of it will be through our advertising. Some of it may be through paid channels. And the same we see across the world. If I look at English Premier League and look at some of the World Cup rights, these rights only have gone up. And that's really driving, for many countries, the ARPU. And it's the only thing that actually keeps the ARPU high. If you look in the States, sports is really what's driving that. Here, of course, there's more than just sports. There's local content, there's local languages, niche content. But to have that right mix of bundles and add-on packages and a la carte is really something that could drive your ARPU up. And it's a very important factor. Of course, content is right there to stay. Beyond content, technology is another driver. Here, you're looking a lot at HD. A lot of people look at HD to drive this higher ARPUs. What we see around the world is HD has already happened in many places. If I look in Latin America, even there, almost everything is now HD. And 4K is the next barrier. The uptake of 4K hasn't been that great so far, and especially here, but there's more content coming online all the time. If I look at the Cricket World Cup of 2015, there was only 7 matches that actually were broadcast in 4K. Now, move to 2018 World Cup Soccer, all the matches are in 4K. So there is already more content coming online. Beyond that, there's also more devices. If I look in the States, the leader here, where about 20% of the households now have a 4K TV. And that is supposed to grow in 2019 to about 35–40%. India is way behind that. I think We're looking at 1 or 2% maybe of households that have 4K televisions in the next few years, but it's coming. So 4K could be a very good driver for more of this, of more ARPU and more the content that actually drives this. And it also can set people apart. And I know, like, if I talk here, and we'll hopefully bring that up, 4K is far away here. But, you know, I see it coming, and I think it's really on the way. Beyond that, DVRs, I know that there are, what, maybe 700,000 DVRs here, so it's very small. But a lot of the clients that we have across the world, DVR is actually really driving a lot of their premium customers. And it's also very sticky. It's one of their fights against the OTT side. If you look at OTT, most times you have to sit through the advertisements. Not all that pleasant. Where if you have a DVR, I think most people that have a DVR don't watch live TV anymore, and they just skip through all the ads. So that is one of the reasons why people actually do stick with linear television or with broadcast television, because they can record it and just skip through the stuff that they don't want. So that's where technology plays a role. Beyond that, of course, there's the add-on services. OTT, I think everybody's talking about it. Everybody tries to make some money out of OTT. That's just one part. I think for many of the operators, maybe even a defensive play, just to make sure that people don't leave. However, you know, there are other services that could come in, and slowly but surely you see these services come in, where maybe there are partnerships specifically with the digital services. So if you look at Netflix, it's a key example in here. Videocon, D2H has a partnership, Airtel has a partnership, Vodafone has a partnership with Netflix. But that is not where you have to stop. I mean, Netflix is probably the first one to start with, because it's a video thing. But why not move into music? We have a partnership with Spotify, or something like gaming platforms like Steam, or, you know, what's very popular in the States now is security. And if I see, the States typically is quite a few years ahead of the rest of the world. What we see now in other areas like the Middle East and in Europe, that actually the drive for security, home security, is actually quite big. And a lot of the cable operators and the DTH operators are stepping into that space. This may be something that actually is coming this way as well. One of the things here in India specifically is the payment models. If you look at a lot of these names that I put here on the slides, Spotify, Netflix, they all come from the West. A lot of them are credit card based, at least initially. And that's not the model that works here. So if I look at the operators, many of them have prepaid models in place. They have the payment methodologies in place to actually take money from these customers. So it's a great extension to offer these services and actually do some sort of partnership with these companies. That hasn't happened much, especially not here, but we foresee that this is going on, and slowly but surely this is trickling in. Beyond that, there's other reasons why ARPU can go up, and I think service is one of these drivers. If I look at customer service, a lot of the companies that have the best customer service actually are able to charge the highest prices. If I look at DirecTV, for example, in Latin America, they charge premium money because they have premium service. They win awards all the time for customer service, and that actually helps them. People feel that it is a better quality that they get. And you could argue it's the same what happens in the phone. Is an iPhone really that much better than a Samsung? Maybe not, but in the perception of many people, it is better, and therefore they are willing to pay more money. So the same could happen here. Obviously, this is more for the higher demographics, because people would only want to pay for this if they value the service and if they actually can pay for that service. But some of these things that I mentioned here, like a customer experience that is throughout, and people feel that they, you know, it doesn't matter if they talk to somebody, or they go on the phone, or they go on the web, they get the same excellent customer service. That really helps. Other things that we see is postpaid billing. Obviously, it's not really common here in India, but we see a lot of our clients, they have sort of two tiers. They do the postpaid for the higher demographics, and people are willing to pay for that, and prepaid for the rest. And it works. The ARPUs are typically higher for the postpaid markets. So they actually almost have two brands within one operator. Then another thing that I think is important for ARPU is keep the customer on. You could argue it's a little bit of churn, but a lot of people, if you have only one day that the customer is actually disconnected, that makes actually quite a bit of difference in ARPU. So if you can keep these people up and you can keep them on and entice them to pay longer periods, it's actually worthwhile, and it actually does make a difference. And we see obviously like a lot of our clients and also here, people try to do that. They try to get more money up front. They try to get people to pay early, those sort of things. And it does help. And the way to pay makes it easier. If you do auto pay, the money automatically gets deducted. And there are some models here that we saw in India that actually do that. That actually makes a big difference there. So the demographics that I showed here, I tried sort of to highlight with these blue lines what could work where. Some of them obviously are only for the higher demographics, but other ones, especially the payment methods, actually would probably help more in the lower demographics. Beyond that, there's the regional differences. Specifically in India, it's a big country. It's almost like a continent in its own right. There's many people, a lot of different languages. So these languages do provide some opportunities for language and niche channels. And that is where the a la carte and the add-on packaging becomes very strong. The other thing is that the differences in income are actually relatively big. In the north and the south, there's some differences there. And the competition is different, right? So especially if you're a larger player that maybe has a national or a regional footprint, it may make sense to look at regional pricing. If you have a lot of competitors, you're probably forced to do a little bit with your price and reduce that to a price point that's very enticing for your customers. But if you can get away with higher prices, maybe you can do it. Why not? And we see this in many places where actually these pricing differences do make a difference, because that actually increases the ARPU in certain markets. Beyond that, obviously, is the customer behavior. A lot of the customer behavior would be driven by things like viewing. It's probably a little bit easier in OTT because you can actually monitor what the customer watches and then start pushing him certain content. If he watches movies, pushing the movie channels. If he watches sports, pushing the sports channels. Try to upsell him or cross-sell him. The interactions with the customer, maybe he calls you up and says, hey, I don't like this, or I want better quality. You can push him the 4K services or the HD services. So those things make difference. And payment behavior. If you see people typically are late with the payments, try to send some emails or SMSs and you have some promotions going for them to pay early, specifically for these people. So if you look at all these things, I think it's very important to create these segments, because it's not one size fits all. Some people are more driven by technology, so push the technology to them. Some people will be more driven by content, push content. Some people are very price conscious, try to optimize the price, but push the right price to them. So it's important that once you've done your segmentation, that you actually do these targeted campaigns to cross-sell and upsell. And then, of course, you need to bundle it the right way. I think the bundling is some of the key things that you need to do. It is important, and I put it here, to limit your promotional costs. Because if you target the wrong people with the wrong promotion, either you don't get any response, so it costs you money, or maybe you have, like for high demographics, maybe you push a low price. You're losing out too, because you get a low ARPU on people that actually are willing to pay more. So it's a balancing act, but it's an important thing to look at. Of course, there's challenges in this approach. If you do the segments, there are challenges in getting that data. Do you have that local market intel? Do you know what your competitors are charging? Do you know what people are willing to pay? But once you have that, and you have systems in place to know that, especially if you then have all these prices and all these products, if you do local pricing or regional pricing with specific products for these particular markets, it is a bit of a mess to manage that. So you need a system to know, okay, how many base packages do I have? How many add-ons do I have? How many price points do I have? It's hard to manage. And you'll have these management in place to really drive that and have the advertising done right. For all that, you need systems. I think the billing system is probably, in many cases, the culprit in this. It's often a system that will actually prevent you from doing things instead of helping you doing things. So therefore, of course, the billing system is very important. And even like your CA system is going to be important, because you may be driving, especially with a la carte, all these individual entitlements that may actually be hard for CA systems and the satellite feeds and everything to manage. So those things are very important. And then ARPU is important, but you need to weigh that off against other things. Increasing ARPU may increase your churn. So if people are leaving because you charge too high a price, what good is it? The same with profit. If you have good ARPU, doesn't mean it's good profit. If your costs have gone up for certain things, let's say you offer HD and your HD costs are high, maybe you make less money on HD than on SD. So you have to look at those sort of things. So it is a balancing act again to do that. Plus, ARPU versus customer acquisition. Do you still want to drive your customer base? Do you still want to get more people in? Maybe you have to do something. Maybe you have to lower the prices to get more people in. So those are some of the challenges that we see with ARPU. But all in all, I think if we're looking at some strategies for ARPU that we see around the world, it's first segment your base and segment where you want to go. Then really understand for each one of these segments what these people want and how much they can pay, and optimize sort of your offerings for them. Approach them, send them campaigns, offers, and then make sure that your systems and management and processes actually match with that. Now, of course, it's easier said than done. It's hard to actually do this, and it's hard to know exactly where you are and what you need to do. But what we've seen around the world is that, especially when people do these sort of very segmented approaches, they do manage to bring their ARPU up. And that's why I want to say that's the winning formula. And I want to turn it over to the panel and maybe to the people here. Because obviously it's easier said than done, and I'm sure as the panel there's some other approaches and some other thoughts of like how difficult some of these things are. So that was it from my side.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coen. If there's anyone who'd like to have a clarification or any advice from Coen, please feel free to ask right now. Or else we can, as the panel discussion goes on, we can, please feel free to at any point in time ask a question. Is there anyone that would like to, Coen, I think maybe we'll continue with sorry, please, right.
What is the average churning in the international market actually?
Sorry, can you?
What is the average churning? Because is it different for the satellite and for the cable segment?
We see actually a lot of differences. If I look, Dish in the US just came with their churn numbers, right? And their customer base stays the same, but they have two products. They have DTH and they have OTT. So they have a skinny bundle on OTT and they have the DTH. The DTH is actually going down very rapidly. I think you're talking about 4 or 5% a year. But they make that up with the OTT. So the customer base stays the same because they are adding hundreds of thousands of subscribers a month now on OTT. But they do actually lose these customers on the DTH side. But of course, that's just one market. In other markets, it's a bit more stable. And I think it depends a lot, at least that's what we see, around how big the broadband penetration is, how much OTT there is, because OTT is clearly affecting that. And some of the markets we see more than others.
Yeah. No, the thing is that as the customer base goes up, the churning also goes in the ascending order. Is it a healthy trend or I do not know, because when the customer base pan-India increases for any DTH operator, automatically when the percentage also increases in the churning.
Yeah, I think it depends also how the models are different, right? In India, maybe it's a little bit different in other places, especially if you would look at some of the subsidized set-top boxes, for example, in either DTH or in cable, then often they come with like a year's contract, right? So then you already lock these people in. As soon as you don't do that, then the churn obviously goes up. So it's different actually what we see across the world.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else? Coen, I'm sure.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Coen. I think that was a very insightful presentation, especially I think Coen is very clearly and summarized the state of Indian affairs in terms of the pay TV industry, what we're going through. To summarize in terms of the challenges that you put up, we're a box that's being compressed from all sides. We've got legislation on top of us. We've got new technologies, competing with new technologies. We're competing with new players in the industry. We're competing with, you know, price points fluctuating, as you mentioned, you know, basic content, premium content, etc. So I think that was a truly insightful presentation. And you know, if I can go to you, Anil, you've been in this industry. You've, as they say, you've smelt the earth before it was stilled, right? So can you tell us, you know, where you think the journey has been and where we're at the crossroads today, and then take it from there in terms of how we grow the business?
Yeah, Vynsely, when I started my career way back in 1984, we did not have pay TV in the country. We rather have no cable television. Those who would be there since beginning, they would remember that we used to hire one cassette per day at 10 rupees, and we used to have one VCR thing way back in 84. And cable TV actually started in 84 in villages when we had one first satellite and we did not have enough transmission centers across the country. So people started downloading content from S-band of Doordarshan. There was no pay channel. There was no free-to-air channels other than the public broadcaster, one single channel. We used to download and distribute in villages. There was, because there were transmission towers in the metros or in nearby areas, so there was no need, you can put up an antenna. In 91, cable television came through Gulf War. People started using dish antenna and started distributing it in townships, in metros also. Our act came in 95, and the first pay channel also came in 95. Unfortunately, when we say ARPU can only increase when the customer wants to pay it. What we have had in India, so since 95 when act came, in 2003, till 2003, there were channels coming, which were, because there was no addressability, it was all analog. So pay channel used to say, okay, you want to show it to all your subscribers, give me some amount of money, some fixed amount of money. We continued till that journey till 2003 and realized this is going nowhere. Platforms were paying, consumers were not. So platforms got stuck with the problem, and eventually ministry intervened and the first CAS regulation came in. Unfortunately, they did not see the much happening on the ground, and it was limited to certain parts of 4 cities, or rather 3 cities. Chennai did not happen. 2004, the regulation came and government realized, oh, there is no regulation, there is no regulator. 2004, TRAI was appointed as regulator. And rules were framed basically to monitor the QS and how do we go about this pay channel business. And we are still struggling with that. So 2018, and probably now in July, Supreme Court will further hear how the channels would be regulated or distributed, or the regulations will come into force. So we have had a free run of channels which are called pay, but actually they are not pay. They are subscription based channels. So whether you want to watch them or not, you cannot, you have to pay. Now who pays? Customer does not. It's the platform which pays. So what has happened is that the subscription revenue, which were 200 rupees way back in 91, are still at that range. So whatever cost of channels have been absorbed has been absorbed by the platforms. When the new regulation hopefully will see the light of the day, then probably customer will ask for the channels and pay for it. I don't think till that time ARPUs are going to increase, because you have a fixed fee model with the broadcasters, you pay a certain amount, and then the only thing you can add on to get more revenue is subscribers. So once you sign a fixed fee deal with the broadcasters, the only way platform can increase revenue is go on add on subscribers. So that price war starts with all the platforms. And that's precisely the reason the ARPUs are frozen. Those who try to increase is through value added services, and value added services like HD you can add, there are very few channels who say that, okay, I will go only by the consumer demand and if consumer wants it, then only you give it to the subscribers. But the rest of the models are that 50% revenue of the broadcasters come from advertisement and 50% from subscription. So he is in a seesaw situation where he wants all the subscribers should watch it so that he can collect advertisement, and probably he should get some kind of subscription revenue also from the platform. So saying ARPU will increase or should increase is a wish list of all the platforms. We all want, we should get more money, we should get more subscribers, we should get additional revenue every year from the subscriber. But that will not happen so soon. We had addressability completed across country only in March 2017. And once subscriber starts paying, then as a platform, we are service providers. We are providing the pipe to the consumer. We get paid for that basic service, and that is fixed. In the new regulation, it has been fixed at 130 rupees. In the old cash regulation, it was 100 rupees, in which you can provide certain free-to-air channels in addition to this.
I think just to interrupt you there, so, and apologies for that. So you're absolutely right, and I think we all agree with your viewpoint, but keeping in mind what Coen was talking about is that our industry is facing a challenge, and you rightfully said, therefore we've got to look at other areas, value adds and add-ons. So where do you see that coming in? I mean, do you see HD being a driver, premium channels being a driver, flanking strategy of OTT? I mean, is that going to push up the ARPUs?
You see, the only way you can increase ARPU now is first get the basics right, which is addressability. So like I said, it has recently happened. Only 1 year back, we have become fully addressable. And now the question is that how do you increase? You have to give something extra to the consumer to pay. One part is HD. Now, it is a different strategy for all the platforms. Remember, one thing is there that you have to believe that in this country we have 30 million, approximately 35 million, nobody knows the real numbers, where people don't pay anything for the subscription, which is free-to-air DTH. Yeah. Unfortunately, the pull of that platform is so much that the pay channels who are pay on other platforms have gone and paid carriage and are free on that platform. So you are competing with something which is called free. So understand, I am not able to charge for my free-to-air services because public broadcaster is competing with me with freebies. So I have a problem that I pay GST on the services I bill for. There is, on free service, there is no GST. Earlier there used to be such a lopsidedness that in one state, there was 60 rupees tax or service tax or entertainment tax or 100 rupees. While on free-to-air, there is no tax. So you have to pay to provide that free-to-air service 60 rupees service tax or entertainment tax. So under that situation, for the basic services, there cannot be much increase in the ARPU because that is frozen by the regulator. Right. The only way we can increase ARPU is getting some content, whether it is HD, whether it is sports or any other content, for which consumer have a demand to pay. Only then ARPUs are going to increase.
Got you. Right. So, Coen, you pointed out, and rightfully so, that the challenge obviously lies in the fact that while we're in, have those 7, you pointed out 6 or 7 pressure points on the industry, we can, in some ways, probably through tiering or segmentation, look at solutioning right now, given our situation. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that segmentation piece that you mentioned? Because, as Anil just pointed out, it's a bit of a challenge for us in terms of the free channels, etc. So what are the other areas that we can look at, which you pointed out, which,
Well, if I look at other markets, yes, right? Yeah. I think you're very clear. It's the same in a lot of markets. What you say, Neil. That it's like maybe not free channels, but they have very cheap channels that they can't make much money on, and that's not where the ARPU goes up. Those are the basic channels that people want. There's not much you can do. So that's where, if I look, in most markets, it's really sports that drive.
What about Asia Pacific, Coen? I mean, markets that are in the Asia Pacific region which have somewhat of a similar ARPU to India. I mean, what have the trends been there? What's been, and where an OTT platform has come in and caused disruption? What are the trends there?
I think most of the markets, at least that we work in, OTT is still in its infancy because of the broadband. There's just not enough broadband, right? So that's not that much of a threat yet, but it's coming clearly. And they do in essence the same thing. They have these channels and they have quality that actually drives their ARPUs. And yes, it's low. I mean, you're talking maybe a bit higher than in India. In India, you're talking about $3 a month, where maybe in those places you talk $4 a month. But it's still pretty low ARPU. And they're trying to drive that the same way, sort of as I explained, through HD, through service, and it's hard. It's not an easy job.
Right, Amit, and you've been driving, I know for several years, the strong technology agenda, and trust me, I think we're completely with you. Anil made a very relevant point that platforms pay, consumers don't. But in your viewpoint, there's a bit of a mindset change that needs to come in to embrace new technology. Why don't you, I know you have a quick deck. Do you want to take us through the deck if it's set up there?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the panel. The presentation is going to come up? Okay, just by the time they're putting up the presentation. So, I've been hearing Coen speak and I've been hearing Anilji also speak. I've been a part of this industry since 2003 when I entered, and I came from a completely different industry itself. And I also found media and entertainment very nice, mainly because, we come from a generation where TV was half an hour a day, and, we just had a lacking for that. To a time when television is all around, so you enjoy this whole space, and you said, this is going to grow because everybody watches television. Entertainment is the only single point, television is the only single point of entertainment for most people. But I've been a part of this 14 years, and we've been discussing this year on year of how this is, and as Anilji very well summed up, that the game hasn't changed because the linear TV has stayed the same, and for whatever reasons we've not moved from that 200 to this. So we've been a company who's been doing set-top boxes for so many years and doing all that. I understand this space. I came in selling set-top boxes because I realized there's going to be digitalization. So we are hoping that digitalization will happen sooner than it can. And we started doing the play. But what you realize, right, today is this is reality today after so many years. Indian consumers actually enjoy the best value on PayTV compared to others in the region. For 150 to 160 channels, we're probably paying the lowest. Now, there is an investment that you've done as an investor, as a platform. There's investment that you've done as a network, but you're not going to make money because there's also broadcasting fees. Their fees have gone up. Government says every year there is an index of wholesale which has to increase. Our salaries have gone up multiples, but this hasn't gone up. So ARPU, when we say, I'm trying to redefine it. When I'm looking at ARPU, I'm not saying it's an ARPU for linear TV. I'm looking at an average revenue per user. So where I'm coming from is, forget about this consumer being a consumer who's watching linear TV. Because he's watching linear TV, you've invested so much, you've reached this consumer. You've reached his house. You have reached, which is what the world wants to. I think all of us go crazy when we look at these valuation numbers of Amazons and everybody, and we say, why are they being so valued high when they're making losses, when they're doing that? It's because we realize that these guys reach the maximum consumer, and if you've reached a consumer, you can sell anything, isn't it? If that is the case, then I think we need to change the dynamics of our game as well. When that's where we are coming in from. This consumer that you've reached to has reached a linear TV where he's going to make 100, 150 bucks. I don't see it moving to 300, 400, whether you have HD or not, for a simple reason that the competition will always keep it the same. We've thought that when HD comes, the box price will go up, the things will go up. No, it actually goes one way. So tomorrow HD channel, which was charging 10 bucks, will also go at $3. So that is not going to change. What you can do is change the dynamics of the game by going to this consumer and start taking a revenue from other areas around the television, which is where we started with, right? So where's MYBOX? We started doing, we've been a company who's always been trying to, as you said, doing new things and new development. So we've done a bigger presentation, but I'll skip through it. This is about the company which is now part of the Hero Electronics group. But what we started doing is we started working on a set-top boxes as a basic step, and we realized, no, we need to leverage. So about a year and a half back, and being a part of the industry, somewhere you tend to see that this industry, the biggest strength is, today each cable operator can be a distribution chain for not only a linear TV, but all the products around it. He can actually make more money on the products he sells to that house, which is how we evolved. So we evolved as a set-top box company. Then we said the set-top box can start doing other services, and to the fact that we are now around the corner where we're going to see IoT services. So I'll just run through two examples which I wanted to show you today. We have an OTT streaming box that we are displaying at our booth. Now, it's a simple OTT box. The world is saying OTT. Everything is saying OTT. We're not saying that just look at it as an OTT perspective. Look at where this product can go to. This product has voice. This product has devices. This product is also a part of a Google is going to have Google Home devices. Now, if the same consumer who is ready to buy and watch a OTT service and is ready to pay, and there are a lot of consumers who are paying on their phones at 199, but they're not paying their cable operator 150. But if the same consumer, you're able to give him a story where you're saying to a cable operator that you can go to this house, sell devices around this product. This can be your whole smart home IoT service. Every time, you don't need to sell him a full 100,000 home. Even if you start selling him sensors, a guy would need a gas sensor for God's sake, which is a necessity, right? Even if you're selling a gas sensor around a device, every month when you go, if you start selling 200 rupee product, you still make 50. Which is a 50 which is yours, you've shared over it, you've created a new ARPU. That's one of the stories that can be created. We recently also started working with Amazon on integrating Amazon Alexa, which is what we've started seeing Echo Dot, in our set-top box. And we're demonstrating at our booth, you can see. Simple solution with the simple box. But what does it do? It's a typical eco thing. If tomorrow a consumer goes and starts buying instead of his phone on the TV, because everybody's seeing the product and buying, imagine there's a revenue which is coming. Now, for Amazon or for a Google to reach a consumer and do this, it's not going to be simple. Because that means for a linear TV, they have to go to each and every consumer. A cable operator for last 10 years has reached there. He's already in those houses. He can also define, as Coen said in his demographics, out of his 100 houses in his colony, this 10 houses can own the cars which can own products like these, which I can sell them. If he goes to those 10 people and he sells them these products, and there's a recurring revenue because you will share on Amazon and everything, you start making money. Now, stop thinking about linear TV. Start thinking about what you can do from this consumer in terms of revenue. If you start making $5, $10 on every product, you are defining $20 on stuff, that consumer is getting acquired. He's going to stay with you. As one of the biggest point was, even as a cable operator, your biggest problem is consumer doesn't stay with you. He leaves. So I've spent $1,000. After a year, 6 months, he leaves. This way, because these are services which need support, right? You need a IoT device running and you need all of that. You start making money on that. You start selling electronic devices. You start doing servicing. You start catering. You start thinking differently. Because I think it's time that we are done with the fact that for 10 years we've been talking the same thing. ARPU will go, ARPU will go. Forget about it. Mobile, ARPU has gone one way. Where have they changed? They've changed the dynamics. They've gone the data way. Why are we not stepping up the panel and saying, change the concept? Let's make so much money in this that linear TV should be free. Why can't I go to a guy and say, I will give you linear TV free if for a year you take subscription of this? Brilliant. So this guy is ready. This guy is ready to work. We are doing a lot of features on middleware. Again, the same audience measurement, which starts giving you return. Let an operator start taking control of that house. That's the why we are saying again and again. This whole game, it's time to reinvent. PayTV is talking always about linear TV, when will channel change, HD. I would say if we have got the correction again, we made one mistake. If we get our numbers right, we can actually come to a situation where we give all of that free and we still make money. But it all needs to start with the mindset change.
Thanks. I think, Amit, that was really well pointed out. Anil, you know, Amit, Coen earlier pointed out, and Amit just pointed out, the technology, probably if we harness it correctly, yes, we require to reinvent ourselves, and we know the challenges of the ground. But isn't this a great way to go? I mean, or do you foresee challenges that you've already attempted it? Sorry, before I just come to you, Ravi, I just wanted to get Anil's take on.
Yeah, very rightly pointed out by Amit and Coen also, because you see, if our focus is going to remain on this linear video and ARPU going up from that, that's not going to happen. I don't foresee happening. It has not happened in the last 30 years. It will not happen in another 5-10 years more. Because one is, consumer is not that sticky to the linear video what it was some 10 years back.
Appointment viewing is completely gone out as well. So
yeah, because you know, there used to be a Doordarshan and there used to be a Ramayan and there used to be no traffic on the roads. Now people don't bother. People have moved from linear video to appointment TV, probably where the OTTs of the world are now getting into. And the only way platform like cable platform like us, or probably some DTH platforms, I don't know what DTH can do on the two-way side. We can provide two-way services. The only way we stop thinking linear and its value-added services, whatever is the linear PayTV or HD, or what there would be additional revenue coming from that sooner or later, sure. But we should stop thinking of other things which we can add. He's rightly pointed out. We have reached to a home. We have been talking convergence all our lives. But have we started providing converged services? No. Even the broadband which is being given is on the other cable which has been laid. So somewhere along the line, the mindset has to change. From where, I don't believe the ARPU of cable are going to go up in this country. Unless broadcasters come out with some compelling content. And like Coen pointed out, the only left broadcasting content was sports. In India, the sports comes free on Doordarshan because there is a must-share clause. That whatever event of national importance is telecasted or bought by any pay broadcaster will be given free to public broadcaster. So how do we see that that content will also drive revenue? No, we don't see that much doing. Probably there could be a change of laws or something like that happen, but that's in future. I don't see that linear video is the content of this 200 rupees of basic services is going to go up unless something happens for which consumer get glued to the TV. And as our experience goes, the customer who was spending 4 hours in front of that screen is now cut down to 2. Some people are only on the devices. They are not watching linear video anymore. There is a cord cutting happening, maybe not at a bigger scale because there are areas of phase 2, 3 where the broadband penetration has not happened. But cord cutting is definitely happening in some homes in metros. So we'll have to think around.
Sure.
We will have to reinvent.
Yeah. So Ravi, I think everyone's on this clearly on the same page that technology is going to be a key driver, right? I mean, what was pointed out and Anil completely agrees. What are your thoughts? I mean, you obviously looked at this space very closely. What are your thoughts on this space? I mean, what more can come in that can change the game?
I think we've had some great insights from the fellow panelists. I would like to quote one line from Coen's presentation. He mentioned about the fact that content is king. I must say content is king, but then data is queen. I mean, you can have all the great content that you have right now, but then if you don't have data, if you don't have a feedback mechanism, I mean, to understand the user's habits, then it's
talking about analytics, is it?
Yeah. Okay. So while we are talking about linear TV, we are at a stage of convergence and almost at a cusp of evolution for these two-way services. So we're talking about OTT services, Android TV. When we talk about these services, we're also talking about a return path. When we have a return path, we have a control on return path. We get great insight into viewing habits, users' habits. What they're watching at what time, what are their ages, what demographics. All that data. Once we have that data, we have very great ability to provide them the specific content that they want, and also have some targeted advertisements. So that's one way of looking at it. Secondly, the fact that all these services can be provided based on OPEX-based model is a very lucrative aspect for the operators. For the traditional linear TV model, you have to spend a lot of money, right, on the infrastructure, on the back end. That's fine. That investment has been made. But the fact that a lot of money has been spent on these infrastructure already, to come up with these new services, you can always rely on cloud-based. I mean, the whole world is moving on cloud, right, on AWS. So just to quote an example here, we have, as part of Kodilsky Group, we are coming up with, exclusive services, or to put it that way, we have a bunch of, infrastructure-based services wherein you can deploy the whole components on cloud, and then you can, you can start services within a few weeks. You don't have to have any kind of capex model. So with that cloud-based approach, you can rely on the analytics parts.
So sorry, I'm interrupting you again. So obviously you've been looking at pushing these solutions and products. Now, what has been the reaction? I mean, has it been positive feedback from potential customers, or do they see a challenge? The reason I ask you this is because there's always this, we're a little concerned about moving to the cloud for whatever reason, right? There's a lot of, probably because of lack of knowledge. What's been your experience in terms of actual feedback from potential customers and moving these services to the cloud?
I think feedback has been good as of now because we are talking to some of the big players as well, and globally we've had good deployments also. Now, what needs to happen right now is everyone is aware of how linear TV works, but there we have to educate operators and customers about the cloud-based services also. So when we talk about cloud-based services, it's not only that you're deploying your backend system on the cloud, but you have to educate customer how they can integrate that cloud-based system with their existing infrastructure, because that's also very important, right? They cannot just forget about their existing linear pay TV services.
Exactly.
So while we are deploying these services, we are educating operators to ensure that their existing linear pay TV mechanism also works in conjunction with the new cloud-based services. So that's how we are trying to educate the operators.
Got you. Amit, I meant to ask you after you finished your presentation, is the road to this, to moving to such technology, is it paved with potholes in terms of the fact that we're not seeing too much of traction in terms of mindset? What has been your experience? Is it a humongously uphill task, or you think we're probably just reaching the cusp of the hill right now?
No. All the changes the biggest thing is resistance to change, right? Just before I answer that, one thing I forgot to tell you is we also tend to forget that no consumer in this country is brand loyal to a platform. People want to watch the content whichever way they can, right? And this is where it's getting more and more disruptive daily. So a guy wants to watch his Big Boss. It doesn't matter whether it comes in colors, whichever channel. Then that is where the ARPU, if we keep thinking will ever grow, is never going to grow, because the consumer only wants to watch that channel. So that was just one point on this. On this whole task, see, let's understand if, and this makes me always remind, and this is where I've always, being honest aside, MYBOX also was, this statement of Steve Jobs, which is very beautiful, that if a consumer knew what he wanted, then we would have still been doing bullock carts. Nobody would have made a car and then shown him and then said, this car actually can help you. We would have still been doing bullock carts, because if we go for a market research and say, what do you want? He only knows what he sees. Somebody's got to take the bull by the horn. Somebody's got to come into the game. There are companies who are doing this globally. We feel we owe it to ourselves as an Indian company who's been there for 10 years, who understands the dynamics. Now, obviously, it's a big challenge because there's a lot of R&D and investment which has been going on. I get asked by my management every time that, when are we going to start seeing returns? And I still believe it's some way to go. But till you don't start doing it, till you don't believe in what you want to do it, you're not going to get it. Now, that is something which is why I don't want to go and tell people I make set-top boxes, because that's what I've been doing for 10 years. So people don't have to come and ask me, will you be able to make a set-top boxes? What I'm saying is, if you start changing, and I'm not saying everybody needs to change, even if 0.1% of the population says, I have 1 lakh customers, 5,000 of those can try this, and I get 5 of those, 25,000, I'm done. Because what it does is, it opens the bottleneck.
Are you seeing that?
And I'm seeing that.
Okay.
So there are some very interesting discussions going on. Obviously, the problem is, you've been burned so badly in this business. Most of, and Anil will agree with me, there's so much of money that has gone down the drain in just trying to get the digital up, that you feel that, where's this going to come in from? Where we are trying to change the dynamics, all those products, I'm actually suggesting, let it be sold B2C. Let it be connected with an operator. So if you go to our booth, we'll show you the demo why we're saying the operator gets a revenue, but the product should be probably sold B2C, because the same consumer, everybody in this room, howsoever demographic he is, he's not got a phone which is for 500 rupees. Nobody buys a 500 rupees phone, right? And if 4 people in the house, that means they bought 2,000 rupee phone, at least 4,000 rupee, 5,000 rupee phone, which they'll change every year. Set-top box, they change once in 4 years. So what if a consumer who understands the play, who's actually looking for a content, let him buy this off the shelf for whatever 2,500, 3,000 rupees, and then you play the demographics of annual revenue. You've got to come with different business models.
Yeah, Coen, that's very relevant, right, in terms of what you were pointing out, segmentation,
that's one part, but also the other thing, and I liked your presentation, because we see a lot of markets where specifically the security aspect, the smart home aspect, is huge, and maybe it hasn't reached here yet. But if you look now, if you think about your cable company, you think about your DTH company, do you think about security? No, you don't. But that is just a mindset, as you said. And if you look now in the street where I live, at least half the homes are secured by the cable company or the DTH company. That is actually the biggest market now. They've taken so much market share of the direct security companies, and it's just a matter of time. But I think it's not only that the boxes need to be sold, like in your case, But I think it's also that the operators would need to push these services and get some acceptance. And it's easier said than done, obviously.
Right.
But that is where the ARPU needs to come from.
Yeah. I mean, where do you see it? I mean, is there an industry body that needs to drive this, create some kind of awareness? You know, we've had this discussion in the past. How do we get it? Because like security, home security, as Coen pointed out, and you also mentioned it in earlier discussions that we've had, those are ways to push up the ARPU, right? Because as you said, linear TV is not necessarily going to go anywhere in a hurry. So how do you think how do we push this?
You see, there are two aspects. I don't see that linear TV is going to go away in near future.
I meant in terms of ARPU growth.
ARPU growth, I don't see anything happening on linear side. So the only way you can increase ARPU is to start offering value-added services, including the IoT of things around your home, security. And we don't need to be on broadband. We can be on our own intranet. Our pipe has reached
You've got
home.
the last mile to the home.
Yeah, last mile to the home. All we need to convert that last mile is into two-way, and you have host of value-added services which you can provide, and probably at a no extra cost to you, probably on an OPEX revenue sharing model like Amit has said. All that would happen very soon. It will happen, because one thing is there that we were struggling like with investments done on digitization, and unfortunately this has gone beyond these 2012 to 2017. By the time we have finished the digitization, we see that the products which we had installed in 2012 are end of life. You see, one that all these electronic products carry a shelf life of 4-5 years, and coupled with our atmospheric conditions, heat, dust and moisture, the lifespan is reduced to 5. So we are reaching to a stage where we have to replace all those digital boxes installed at homes now.
So do you see that as an opportunity, the fact that
that's
you can
an opportunity, because the new investment whosoever will be doing will be not doing on linear video or on those simple vanilla digital boxes. There would be host of boxes which are being displayed in various booths here, where you are offering Android services, you are adding IoT of things, and probably this fight between broadcasting and platforms would be a thing of past in another 5-6 months. Unfortunately, it has dragged 5-6 years more than it should have been. So which has caused the heartburns of investments going bad, the platforms losing interest, investors losing interest in the technology, or this convergence thing happening in future, because everybody wants return on revenues. If you, like I said, if I don't see, I can't go and tell my management that ARPUs are going to increase 50% if I don't see that happening. And if that is not happening, the new investment will not come. So we have to think and devise ways, like has been pointed out. Technology is there. Billing you can control all the services from back end. So customer who wants these services will pay. Probably initially 4-5%, 10% will start doing that. And eventually, if it goes to 30-40%, everybody will make money.
Coen, you know, Anil made a very good point, and that one challenge that we have in the country is we've invested heavily in digitization, right? And not necessarily the products that we've invested in are suitable for the long haul. When I say long haul, in doing multiple other services, etc. Times come to change now, but investors are concerned because you're saying, okay, the first wave of investment that we made into, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? The first wave of investment we've made into that business, we're still waiting to see any traction on the returns. And now you're saying, hey, go in for this new technology, go in for this new, services. I mean, how do we, is there a secret sauce to this? I'm sure that some countries elsewhere could have gone through this hump. Is there,
Well, what we've seen as part of digitization
Right.
is often that comes also with bandwidth increase, right? I'm not sure if that happens on your side too, but there is actually bandwidth increase that all of a sudden becomes available. If I look at some of the markets where actually the cable sort of lost out on DTH, if I look at Latin America, for example, a similar sort of aspect
Right.
is here, right? They originally lost out, but now they're catching up because they got all this bandwidth coming in, and they're actually better suited for these services that we're just talking about, because they have the two-way channels instead of the single-way channels that like DTH has. So I think that is what a lot of people see, is that it's not just the digitization of just digital channels, but also the fact that a lot of the bandwidth actually became available at the same time. And that is where they actually start making their money. And then it ties in with what you said, where all of a sudden these services are actually viable, right?
Yeah. Ravi, I mean, have you run any test cases in the country, in India? Have you all done any test cases in terms of rolling out the technology and seeing what kind of feedback's there? I mean, is there anything in progress?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we are investing heavily on the cloud-based services, and we are talking to some of the big operators also. And to answer one of your earlier question that you asked Coen as well, I mean, the first investment that went ahead, on digitization of the cable, that was in 2003, right? But this new investment is definitely not going to be very large, because the whole infrastructure can be deployed on cloud. So as I said, it's all OpEx-based model. The client devices, definitely, if you're talking about Android boxes, there has to be investment in that, definitely. But if you talk about OTT services, that kind of model can be completely on cloud. So the investment from operator side is almost zero, or if not, a huge investment. So the fact that we are looking at some investments which are only on the client side, if you are actually replacing the devices, as Anilji mentioned, because there's a life cycle for each device also. So if you are replacing set-top boxes, why not replace them with hybrid set-top boxes? But on the infrastructure side, on the back-end side, the investments are not going to be very huge. It will definitely be a cloud-based model, and all these services can be started right from there.
Right. I'm going to open this discussion out to the floor. Please, Amit,
I had one more point. When you're talking of investment, you also have to understand. I started the discussion by saying why there is valuation that big companies get outside, right? As a business house, when you get into a business, you're also looking at strategic investments coming in all the time. That's how you grow. That's how you grow your business. Now, for the reason that this has got delayed, the funds have got dried up, the bigger investors are not looking, even the banks in India don't look at cable in a way which is, because we face this, right? We go to a lot of banks for saying, I need to fund my operator in India and help me on that. They don't, because they realize that a guy who's making $150, he's going to take 12 months to get his recovery on a simple box. Now, take the other case scenario. If you have a cable operator who himself is an ISP or has an ISP partnership, an ARPU on a broadband is still very high. I'm not saying it's going to stay there, it's going to come down because there's going to be competition. But it's an ARPU which is much higher, much stronger. Now, if, as one of the points started with Coen's presentation was the lock-in, all these devices are not going to charge maybe 3,000, 2,000, whatever cost structure. If they go in and make a business case together as teams, which we've lost out in the last time, because PayTV, we literally everyone did in silos. There was a operator, there was an LCO, everybody worked silos. Here is a story where you all come together. You all say there's a broadband guy who's making, say, $800 a month on an ARPU. 3 months, he gets his price down. Consumers ready to stick for 6 months to 12 months because, ideally I would till I believe somebody's going to come in the next 6 months. I've got my recovery in 3 months. My ARPU starts coming in, and I actually create a recurring model. I don't see any private equity investor in the world not investing in that model. Not coming in and investing, because you are now a profitable company who's going to have a recurring business. That is the formula for what everyone's making money.
And you're not focusing on the base requirement. You're
probably making base freer because you're getting more houses.
Right. Sorry, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to ask a question? Please feel free. We have someone with a microphone there who can go around. Is there anyone that would? Okay. So we'll continue. I think we'll take another 5 minutes. If there's someone who'd like to ask something, please just feel free to just raise your hand, and we'll have someone come across with the microphone. So, Coen, just to wrap it up, I think you started. Actually, to be very honest, I think your presentation summarized our entire panel discussion, right? So that was great. You've seen the challenges. You've seen the problems and the hurdles we're going through in the country. So if you had to look at a roadmap and say, okay, listen, I sit here today in March 2018. Here's what I believe or project is the ideal roadmap for the business ahead, for the country ahead in terms of the PayTV business. Where do you see the inputs coming in based on your presentation?
I think the biggest thing is what we've been talking about is actually value-added services, because the free TV keeps the prices down, and even the other ARPUs of linear TV is going to be steady.
So you're
It's
saying
going to
so-
go up, and maybe it goes up this 10% that's
So
predicted.
you're saying like
it's-
security, you're saying things like security, etc., become the
That's
driver?
what I see, because otherwise OTT is going to eat everybody's cheese from the bread, you know,
Got you.
because it's just going to happen. The packages are getting smaller. We see that all over the place. People don't need 200 channels. They want 15 channels, 20 channels. So we do see that. On the other hand, you know, yeah, you got your sort of organic growth of the channels and maybe your inflation that helps you. But that's not really exciting. And I think it's more what we heard earlier. That's more the exciting business, to actually add more services and those things. One question that I had actually for you is, how do you get these services on your platform? How do you get people to buy into that? Right? Let's say that you have security. Do you have a partnership model or something in mind?
So again, this is going to start getting evolved, right? Then nothing's got evolved over a period of time. So we've been creating a platform. When we started making a platform on the devices, we started coming in that how does it work on a hub? Then we started attacking the hub. Now the beauty with us was that since we are an R&D firm who designs and develops everything in-house, we started putting pockets together. We know that nothing is going to happen alone, but we've come to a platform where we are able to demonstrate and show the people. And because of that, so the Amazon demo of putting an Alexa in a cable box, right? That's something which we went and spoke to Amazon, you know, they kind of, that you're doing so much on EcoDot, why are you not doing on a set-top box? So they said, nobody's talking about this globally. We said, can we try it for you? So we've invested for a year, showed it to them. When the POC started working, they moved on it. Now we know that what are the challenges. Obviously, it's not going to be proof till it starts coming out. We're going to launch most of these devices in April because they're undergoing certification. But what it does is it starts creating a module where we know our costs now. We know our factoring now. We've been a part of the business. The good thing is I haven't been selling in US at $100 that if I come down in 20 in India, I need to, you know, take care of that. I've been in India. I've always been selling at $20. I've not had that challenge of being made in $100. So I can actually benchmark the prices, and these are global prices. You would be surprised that I've actually got a couple of Asia Pac companies talking to me because the same Google and the Amazon said, hey, we've got this guy in India doing it for you. Now, sometimes maybe people outside would respect you, but what it is doing is every industry needs to evolve and change. We think the trend is around the corner. Forget security camera. I am still very confident just a fire sensor, because half of the time we forget to switch off the gas. Just a sensor near it. If it saves one house and it probably costs 200, 250 or 300 bucks or 500 bucks, it is still a need there. We need to start attacking the need of a consumer rather than going and telling him, can I give you a smart light which works on your beck and call? I don't need the light, but I definitely need a fire because I probably forgot to switch off the sensor at night. So we need to just move ahead and move that. We need to stop thinking about television saying that is how I entered the house. In fact, one of the sessions I actually suggested, forget anything, go to Amazon, say, can I deliver Amazon package to that house because my cable operator goes and collects the money. You'll probably make 60 bucks more on something which you anyway do every day. And that creates a business model for you.
I think Amit, sorry, do you want to say something, Coen?
No, I think the last point is very important, and that's what I pointed out earlier as well. It's this whole payment model, especially in a country like India. It's very important. And the cable companies, they have actually this relationship with the customer. So that's really what you can build up on.
Time to leverage that relationship. Ravi, do you want to any points from you before I ask Anil to give us some closing comments on how he sees the industry panning out?
Yeah, I think just closing comments from my side as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're investing heavily on these cloud-based services. We are working on as part of Podolsky Group, we have got these OpenTV SC product, which is an end-to-end module or a profile. So operators can deploy these services within a span of few weeks, and then they can have a good insight on their viewing habits, their the analytics parts as I mentioned earlier. So AWS or cloud is going.
So you believe operators can look at leveraging local advertising,
yes,
right, and try to earn more money because now they have targeted audiences.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Anil, I'd like to have you run one of the biggest platforms in the country. If there's anyone else who knows the pulse, it's you. And how do you see it going from your, share with us some of your thoughts.
The only way forward would be to look at the household as in terms of spending and what revenue share you can get out of this. Now, if a household is spending, say, 10,000 rupees on different services, we have a connected home. The host of services, what we can offer from our back end and which are possible today, in terms of converged. You know, the one good thing about our business model, particularly in cable platform, is that we have fiber to the curb. The only way we have to add further is from curb to home. Probably another 300 meter you have to convert the network two-way. And then start thinking in terms of consumer spending, rather than whatever consumer is spending on the services side and what you can get out of it. And like rightly Amit pointed out, you can have a model of delivery also, that customer services are being delivered, products are being delivered. The host of logistic companies have come up who are delivering products to the home. And our business partners are not more than 1 kilometer away from that home always. You see, the only good thing about cable business in India is that the customer gets 24/7 services at no cost. Operators don't charge for their service. But the additional services which can be given will give you revenue. And if you start getting 1,000 rupees from a home, then probably this crib about 30-40 rupees fight, which always happens between pay TV broadcasting and cable companies or DTH, will go away. We will start thinking, okay, 1,000 rupees, I get 20%, 200 is more than enough for me. Everybody makes money in this. So once we start looking at that, and technology is available, billing system, software, the box side, you see the box what you have can give you all kind of services, like Amit has rightly pointed out. You can integrate IoT of things, you can add in artificial intelligence, you can do so many things with it. And that screen at home, that television is not going to go away. You will have your tablets, but at the end of the day, you go home and you find that TV is not working, you find something is amiss. So you want that TV in working mode, whether you watch it or not. It's like a photo frame at present always. So that is going to remain. So if that big screen is going to remain, so whatever you do in today's technology, the kind of bandwidth you get on your mobile, you cannot transfer the same content on the TV. So if you are talking that you want HD quality, so that will come only on that big screen, the viewing effect which you will get. Mobile is not going to, you can't watch a mobile, you can't get a mobile of 14-inch or 15-inch. In your good viewing player, you want a big screen. So that is going to remain there. All we have to do is, somehow as an industry body also we are working on it, that get these all technology things integrated with our business model. Where we are B2C, there is a direct revenue coming to us. Where we have a B2B2C, there we get a revenue share model working. So as soon as the technology becomes more accessible, you see everybody is testing. These devices are being tested since they are first of the line in production, probably have been used elsewhere, but in Indian environment that test process is on. The moment these devices reach to a certain percentage of home, there will be no stopping.
Straight away. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's any question, you have one last opportunity. Please feel free. If there's no one, okay, I'll quickly summarize. I think we had a wonderful panel discussion. What's very, very clear from this discussion, which by the way is represented by some very senior industry people, is that very clearly the focus is not on growing ARPUs for the paid TV business, but it's basically how do you get a greater share of wallet, right? How do we make sure that each customer that's already connected to our platform, whether it be cable or DTH, how do we offer greater services? How do we put in secured home security? How do we put in electronic surveillance as part of it? How do we offer cloud-based services? I think all of that, keeping in mind the fact that there's no one who's better connected to the customer than a pay TV platform. So on that note, thank you very much for hearing us out patiently, especially because this was post-lunch. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good day to you all.
Now we come to an end of this very informative and interactive session. I thank all our speakers for their valuable time and remarks. I request Mr. Fernandes to please hand over the token of appreciation to all the speakers.
Thanks, Amit. Thank you so much. Very nice. See you around. Good work. Can I also have a Samsung music now? Yeah, sure. I have your card, right? I made it to you. Okay, good. Oh, thank you very much. So how long have you been